right, welcome back to our teaching in Song of Songs. We are in chapter 5. We just completed verse 8 and we read verse 9. Let me go back a little bit though, just a real fast overview because I want you to try to catch this. It isn't seen well in the English translation, but she says, the woman she's running after Christ. She's come back into the daughters of Jerusalem, into their churches, which are the denominations. And she says to them, she says, I charge you, I solemnly charge you, I adjure you. It means it's a solemn oath or charge. If you find my beloved, as to what you will tell him, for I'm lovesick. So, we read this and people have thought forever that, well, she's saying to the daughters of Jerusalem, if you find my beloved, I want you to swear you're going to tell him something for me. You tell him I'm lovesick. But that's how it's always been interpreted. That's not what she's saying. She's saying, I solemnly charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, the denominations, if you find my beloved, as to what you would tell him, I'm lovesick. So she's not saying, tell him I'm lovesick. He knows that. He awakened her heart. He already did that work. He knows that. And then we see her response in verse 9. What kind of beloved is your beloved, O most beautiful among women? What kind of beloved is your beloved that you thus adjure us or charge us? So it's a logical response. They're going to say, what kind of beloved is yours? I mean, what do we say to him? What kind of beloved is he? They don't understand. So they ask her about her beloved. We want to know him. We want to know him like you know him. What kind of beloved is your beloved? It's very interesting. Literally, that first clause in verse 9, what kind of beloved is your beloved, is what is your beloved more than another beloved? How come your beloved is different than our beloved, is what they're saying. Their beloved is part of a trinity of gods. But her beloved isn't. And they know that because while she's standing in their midst, they feel the presence and they know it instinctually. How come your beloved is different than our beloved? If we find him, but how can we find him? Because we don't know who he is. Why is your beloved so different than our beloved? Then they say this, oh, most beautiful among women. And women representing the churches, representing groups of the Lord or church ages. The 7 churches of Revelation is 7 church ages, and they're 7 different women, you could say, representing the church standing there. But this is the most beautiful of church ages the daughters of Jerusalem have ever seen. They've never seen the like. And so they also don't understand who her beloved is. If, verse 8, you find my beloved. It's interesting, the word beloved there in verse 8 and in verse 9 is Strong's number 1730. We've talked about it before. It literally means boiling love. Boiling love. It's not lukewarm love. Oh no, it's boiling love. It's boiling love. If you find my boiling love, as to what you will tell him, I'm lovesick. So she does this. She explains to the daughters of Jerusalem her heart. She's lovesick. They're not. So there's a big contrast, a big difference there. She is all lit up with the extra oil from her flask. And on fire for God, on fire for the beloved. They're not. Because she's so lit up and anointed of God, the daughters of Jerusalem say, you're the most beautiful church we've ever seen. And your beloved is different than ours. What kind of beloved is he? How is he different, in other words? How is he so different that you would charge us like this? So in other words, tell us what to say. Tell us how to seek. Tell us who he is. So that we can understand, so that we can seek with you. What kind of beloved is your beloved more than another beloved? They don't know him, but they are acknowledging that he's different than their beloved. Isn't that scary? That should scare everyone. It should scare everyone that the church is sitting there crying out and saying, your beloved is different than ours. And we acknowledge you're the most beautiful group of Christians we've ever seen. Wouldn't that cause you a fear inside? Yes. If the Spirit of God is on them that heavy, that they're the most beautiful group we've ever seen or ever could imagine, then we must be wrong. We must be doing something wrong. Because we're not lit up and anointed like they are. Something is wrong. I'd like you to turn to Hosea chapter 2. I'm going to read for a few verses here. Now this is very interesting, Hosea 2. This is still several hundred years before the catching away to Babylon. This is when the Lord was still working with Israel and trying to turn them. It isn't fully fulfilled. This chapter is not fulfilled in their day. It does relate to their day and their spiritual condition, but it also relates to the end times. And we see that clearly because in verse 18, it literally is talking about the coming of the Lord at the second coming. So we see this as a dual prophecy. It's talking both about, number one, Israel in its day in about 750 or 755 years before Christ, right around there. But it's also talking about the very last days when peace will be ruling the earth and that the animals themselves will no longer kill and destroy. That's a millennial prophecy. So it shows that there's a dual nature to this prophecy. So looking at this, since the first fulfillment has already been partially fulfilled, which was in Israel's day in 755 BC, the second fulfillment applies to us in our day. And the very interesting thing about Israel is this, that since their temple was destroyed, and it's not coming back, because the second temple was destroyed, the third temple is the hearts of people, all people, whether they've surrendered that heart to the Lord yet or not. But this fulfillment now is speaking of the church because it can't be speaking of literal Israel because they're in unbelief. They're in unbelief. Over what is the statistics? 87% of all Jews are saying that they're non-believers, they're secular. This isn't speaking to them. And of the ones who claim to be religious, they're very religious, and they would not fulfill this anyway. This is speaking to the church. Remember, Romans 11, the church has been grafted in. So the roots of the church belong to us too. This is speaking to the church. And it says this, say to your brothers, Amai, and to your sisters, Ruhamah. Now, Amai means my people. Ruhamah means she has obtained compassion. So typical with the Hebraic poem or prophecy, it gives you a hint of the end right there at the beginning of the story. And then right after that hint, it goes into the story as to how you ended up at that end result. Verse 2, contend with your mother. Contend, for she is not my wife, and I am not her husband. Of course, the wife, the mother there, is the church. And let her put away her harlotry from her face and her adultery from between her breasts, lest I strip her naked and expose her as on the day she was born. I will also make her like a wilderness, make her like a desert land, and slay her with thirst. This is very interesting because this is right out of Revelation chapter 12, verse 14. You see, it's interesting. If we want to back up, remember, doctrine is understood here a little, there a little, line upon line, precept upon precept. But it's in this chapter, it's in this book, it's in the Old Testament, it's in the New, and then they all relate to one another. But you have to understand the general doctrine for it to work. Song of Songs, chapter 8, verse 5, tells us that the bride, the crier church first, which is part of the bride, they're the first fruits of the bride. Okay, the crier church, where are they found? In the wilderness. The word wilderness is literally desert. They're found in the desert, and they're lifted up from there, and they're led back to their mother's house. And here the Lord is showing us, and we see that also, by the way, in Revelation chapter 12, verse 14. Right after the rapture and the bride church is taken, the visible church that's left behind, where are they sent? Into the desert. The same desert the bride was in. Because it's there they will learn to sell out all that they can obtain that extra oil, or that another picture of the metaphor of another metaphor is gold tried through fire. So the Lord says, I will make her like a wilderness or a desert. I will make her like a desert land and slay her with thirst. In other words, you're not going to feel any anointing. You're not going to feel any presence of the Lord. You're going to be all alone, just you. You're going to cry out for God, and there'll be no answer. You're going to sit in that desert and get real hot until you finally start sacrificing all that you owe and all that put a wall up between us. You're going to sacrifice self, because Laodicea is the rule of self, the rule of the people, the rule of the laity. You're going to sacrifice self. You're going to put self up on that cross. You're not going to take it down. You're going to die to self fully. And then she says, then it says, verse 4, also I will have no compassion on her children, because they are children of harlotry. We see that in Revelation chapter 12, verse 17. Her children who are beginning to run off into the desert with her suddenly stop. They turn around and they face the beast that's coming after them. They're unwilling to run to the desert. They're unwilling, and they make a stand right there, and the beast overcomes them, and the beast kills them on the spot, the remnant of her children, because they're children of harlotry. One more verse. Verse 5, for their mother has played the harlot. She who conceived them has acted shamefully. For she said, I will go after my lovers who gave me my bread and my water, my wool and my flax, my oil and my drink. She will go after her lovers. We'll talk about those lovers at the next video. Lord bless you until we come back again.